Shangri-La Dialogue initiated in 2002, and this year marks the 20th anniversary of the Shangri-La Dialogue. I think it is a perfect moment to sum up what roles the Shangri-La Dialogue has played in this region. So my question goes to Dr. Huang and also Dr. Chipman. And I have heard a lot of views, and some view Shangri-La Dialogue as positive, thinking it's a forum bringing together high-ranking officials and scholars from this region to improve communication and exchanges. But there are negative views the Shangri-La Dialogue as a forum dominated by the United States and its allies, serving the interests of the US and its allies. And also the topics it sets often point to differences rather than cooperation, and divergence rather than convergence. So my question is, what role over the past years Shangri-La Dialogue has played in Asia-Pacific security, and how do you view the comments, the opinions I have mentioned above? Thank you.
General Chow asked SLD, and John, the question was directed to both of us, so I presume you're going to make a strong defense about the SLD and its roles, but let me just give my 2 cents worth. I've attended a number of conferences. I've attended the Sangshan Forum. And sometimes it's a matter of taste. I can imagine that people from the PLA come here and find this raucous, a bit rambunctious. This is the Western liberal mode of many ideas, and from this you're supposed to gain wisdom, and they go back and says it was thoroughly discombobulating. That's entirely understandable. On the other hand, when things are too structured, too predictable, people don't like to attend those because they feel that it's too scripted, that when you say things, the end is already determined. So why not say it and just send me something and I can read it, rather than travel a few thousand miles to arrive in Singapore. For China, it must decide for itself whether the Shangri-La Dialogue adds value. There is no coercion for you to attend. Is it better to come to an open platform, to subject yourselves sometimes to a tyranny of questions, to what might seem a common view from others, to explain yourselves, or to retreat from that engagement? That is something that China must decide for itself. For us, we'll take your feedback seriously, and I'm sure John will, and to see how we can make it more productive.
My historical reflection on the Shangri-La Dialogue is that the very first Shangri-La Dialogue convened in this room in May 2002. It convened at a time when there was very serious, high-level international concern that there would be a nuclear war between India and Pakistan. And on this stage, I remember the then Minister of Defense of India, a former trade unionist and a person who had great passion for his people, George Fernandez, in tears as he spoke, expressing his concern about how a very intense disagreement between Pakistan and India might lead to nuclear war. And the activity of a lot of the other ministers of defense that were here gathered was to have quiet bilaterals with the Indians and the Pakistanis to calm the tension and assist a peaceful resolution of a dispute that very literally could have gone nuclear. And I think the Shangri-La Dialogue, in its first year, proved its utility to assist practical diplomacy. I might just note, since we have had so many difficulties in the last 2 years meeting that at the second Shangri-La Dialogue, standing more or less where Minister Ung is now sitting, Mr. Lee Kuan Yew on May 30th, 2003, welcomed the international delegates to the Shangri-La Dialogue on the very day that the World Health Organization had declared that Singapore was SARS-free. One more thought, and that is that in the early years of the Shangri-La Dialogue, a comfort level developed amongst the ministers of defense who were meeting initially under very generalized topics about the future regional framework. Some arrangements that had been allowed to linger a bit long without senior attention began to revive. For many years, the five-power defense arrangements were beginning to meet at defense attaché and high commissioner level. When it became convenient for all five ministers to be present here, the five-power defense arrangement aligned their annual ministerial meetings with the occasion of the Shangri-La Dialogue and thus lifted to a permanent level their ministerial engagement. It was only about 4 years after the first Shangri-La Dialogue that there was the start of an ASEAN defense ministers meeting, and a few years after that the ADMM Plus and the like. So our effort is to informally, as Minister Ng so stylishly said, help to incubate a variety of different security relationships that gives diverse expression, as was so passionately expressed just now by the Minister of Fiji, to the need intelligently to arrive at the peaceful resolution of disputes. And I think the People's Republic of China has benefited hugely from the participation it has had in the Shangri-La Dialogue. It was fantastic that there's been a China-ASEAN meeting. It's been noted by everybody that there was a 1-hour face-to-face bilateral between Secretary Austin and General Wei Feng-he, the first face-to-face meeting between those responsible actors in nearly a third of a decade. And so I endorse what Minister Ung said, not only specifically about China, but indeed about all of the countries that come to the Shangri-La Dialogue, that it is what you make of it, and we invite you to make the most of it.